Hello again and welcome to Philosophy Roulette. This is number 71 and it looks like we're up and running, so that means it is time to read some philosophy. Awesome. So let's see what we got today. New journal articles. Come on, baby. Let's get lucky. Alright. You know, I've seen agriculture and human values post a bit. I'm a little, alright, I'll take a look. Not really my thing, agriculture and human values. But yeah. I was like, so, well, let's just go see. Worktribe.com. Let's see. Alright, let's take a look at this. If this is something worth reading, I'll take a look. Up 27 pages. Not happening, but alright. Look at all of this. Yeah. Yeah, this is I'm sure this is very interesting stuff. It is like so far outside of anything I know. I'm a little worried about this. What I could do, of course, is go to like, oh, well, there's analysis. Now I can be like, well, I'm gonna go look at something like, go to all the popular, sort by popular here. But now it's like, well, if there's an new analysis paper, might as well go do that. Come on, baby. Wait, where'd that new paper come from? Oh, maybe it's... Oh, see that thing. What'd I do? Let's see how long. The Quantum Revolution Philosophy. Oh, David Wallace is a philosophy of science. Come on, David Wallace. Let's see if you posted it. The Quantum Revolution. Nope, nope, nope. So, too bad. Quantum Revolution in Philosophy. That's too bad. I bet it'll be up at some point. But I don't see it here. That is too bad. So our best interest defense of paternalism, strictly speaking. Fit for an end. Come on, baby. Let's get lucky. I mean, one of these days I just go to the surgical catheter. That is not what I'm looking for. This is this one here, but not available. So, that's too bad. Robbers, pickpockets, and average mutual firmness. Yeah, see, not available to download. Do not have access to this. Shucks. I don't have access to that one. Shucks. Ah. First person thought. Oh, look at this. 238 downloads. Alright. That's kind of cool. Good for them. What is this called? This is first person thought. Yeah, it's kind of a common name. And so I don't actually see it right here. Here it is. Yeah. Nope, not available. Come on, folks. Alright, so I've been avoiding doing things that say like a response to somebody or other because I haven't read the somebody or other. So, you know, it's here. And it's kind of unfair that, you know what, maybe they said something interesting. So we're gonna find out. Why should I be unhappy about not having read anything? I haven't read anything anyway. So that's silly. I should just read the stuff. Then I'll have read it, and then I won't have to have that complaint anymore. If you are good enough to join me in the chat one day, please do. You can get the paper by typing !paper in the chat box. Or you can get the link to this page, and then you can get it off this page, of course. Alright. Also, please send me a suggestion. I've had suggestions in the past, and they were good. I'd love to get a new suggestion. It's not like I've read anything anyway, so I'll probably read that one. The only problem is it has to be kind of short. Like, thought is a little bit longer than analysis. You have to think that's basically the limit. About 15 pages is what I can handle. Otherwise, after that, it gets over an hour, and it's hard to read for like an hour and a half straight. So, but I'd love to read anything someone sends in. Here we go. Rescue and personal involvement. Singer and Unger argue that widely shared intuitions about the duty to assist in emergency cases support comparably stringent duties to aid distant persons living in extreme poverty. I mean, we don't have to go very far. You are in the middle of a pandemic. You don't, I mean, I'm pretty close to ground zero at this point. It's kind of sad. Not kind of, it just is very sad. In part 3 of her ingenious book, Doing and Allowing Harm, Fiona Woollard rejects their arguments, claiming that while we are morally required to make substantial sacrifices to aid others when personally involved in an emergency, as in Singer's famous case in which you can pull a drowning child out of a pond, we are not so required otherwise. On the basis of a number of cases, Woollard argues that there are 3 ways in which one could be personally involved in an emergency: by being physically proximate to the victims of the emergency, so proximity. I guess that's a spatial proximity. I mean, no one really is worried about temporal ones, but yeah. By being the only person who can help the victims, uniqueness, or by having personal encounter with the victims, so personal encounter. So that's not an encounter. I mean, I've encountered lots of people. I don't care about a lot of them. I guess you'd have to have some personal connection, really, not so much encounter, but you have they're your friend. Each of these factors is claimed to be intuitively feasible, sufficient to ground personal involvement, and thus a requirement of substantial sacrifice to aid. We show that Woolard's case contained various confounding factors. In view of the more precisely drawn cases we offer here, it is clear that neither proximity nor uniqueness nor personal encounter is intuitively feasibly sufficient in the way Woollard claims. Proximity. Woolard's argument for the sufficiency of proximity for personal involvement revolves around 2 cases. Door. You learn from the radio that a child is drowning outside your door. How does the radio know these things? That's amazing. You have the best radio in the world. There are other people who could save the child, but none of them are likely to do so. So, distant pond, many saviors. You hear on the radio that a child is drowning about 10 miles away. Again, how does the radio know these things? Drowning does not take this long to get it to the radio. If he is not rescued, he will die. You realize that you are able to save the child. If there are many other people who can help, but thus far no one looks likely to come forward. So this is the Good Samaritan problem. Everyone tragedy of the commons. Everyone is like, you've got this common issue and no one steps up. Okay. According to Woolard's intuitions, you are required to make substantial sacrifice to save the child in door, but not the child in distant pond. Many saviors. On her view, substantial sacrifice might consist in paying $500 upfront, a means to aiding or acting in a way that would result in the loss of a body parts or long-term financial security. Side effect of aiding. Okay. So yeah, so you might have to pay a bunch or lose something you really do not want to lose. Yeah. As Woollard herself notes, it is important that her 2 cases differ with respect to proximity only, so it's just physical distance. Yet it is much easier to see how aiding comes with risk to one's body or financial security indoor than in distant pond. I don't really see. Doors aren't really that dangerous to people, but ponds can be. Further, indoor, there's a possibility that... Oh wait, is the kid's drowning right outside the door? Okay. I'm sorry. I was like, doors are not that dangerous. It is much easier to see how aiding comes with risk to body for financial security indoor than in distant pond, many saviors. Further, indoor, there is a possibility that one's intuitions will be affected by views about special duties to assist those on one's property or within one's community, and also by the tendency most of us have to rush directly to aid those in urgent need. So is that like a phenomenological argument right here? Like if you can see the person, does that like do something to us? I wonder if there's like a phenomenology of rescue. That'd be interesting, especially nowadays with such problems we have out in the community. Consider then the following cleaned up variations of Woolard's original cases. Nearby pond many saviors. While out for a hike in a foreign land, you hear on the radio that a child is drowning on the other side of a very tall brick wall about 10 meters away. If he is not rescued, he will die. You cannot reach the child yourself, but realize that you can be able to save the child by paying $500 to activate a machine that will scoop him out of the pond. There are many other people who can help, but thus far no one looks likely to come forward. Alright, so distant pond, many saviors. Same as nearby pond, many saviors, but here the child is about 10 miles away. We do not find it intuitive that you are required to make substantial sacrifice to save the child in nearby pond, many saviors, but not the child in distant pond, many saviors. Yeah, so these seem much more, like you don't have to do anything, but then again, I'm finding these examples so contrived that I'm losing intuition anyway about what I should be doing. So, I mean, it's like, you've got a machine and a 10-meter wall you can't get onto the other side of, and it's a $500, like, slot. Like, you can insert through the thing and it will perfectly save the child. It just seems so, I mean, I know this is philosophy and you can have contrived thought experiments, but when you're asking about intuitions about contrived thought experiments, then we've got problems, because if they're so weird, you're not... Why should I have any opinion one way or the other about these two things? Okay. Next, consider nearby and distant pond many saviors. While out for a hike in a foreign land, you hear on the radio that 6 children are drowning on the other side of a very tall brick wall. One child is just 10 meters away, the other 10 miles away. If they're not rescued, they will die. You cannot reach any child yourself, but realize that you're able to pay $500 to save the nearby child, or instead save the distant 5. There are many other people who can help, but thus far no one looks likely to come forward. So we're getting into trolley problem areas. If you pay $500, you can solve some kids. You save, like, yeah, you've got a trolley heading down the thing, and the trolley tracks go for 10 miles, so there's some kids 10 miles away that way. There's a kid that's close. Alright. We find it intuitive that you are required to pay $500 to save the distant 5 rather than save the nearby 1. You are surely at least permitted to pay $500 to save the distant 5 than to save the nearby 1. This last claim, however, is problematic for Woolard's view. On her view, when we are required to aid the particular victims of emergencies in which we are personally involved, we are intuitively not permitted instead to aid even a far greater number of victims with whom we are not so involved. Maybe that's her view. I'm a little worried about that, because it's like say there's like a distant universe and I could save the entire planet by drinking a swig of beer right now. It's like, well, by doing that, some other not so great thing happened in this world right here. But I have like saved an entire civilization. I mean, that means something. But it's a very different sort of thing than what's going on here. These cases bring into focus the inability of physical proximity to ground personal involvement if, as Woollard claims, we are required to make substantial sacrifices when personally involved in an emergency, but not so required otherwise. Well, I'm not sure. Like, again, it feels like there's a phenomenology. When you can see someone drowning or in trouble, it's like you get a physical effect, and you want to do something. When they're this, like, abstract, oh no, something bad's happening far away, it's like, well, I don't have the same sort of reaction to that physical, like, I don't have the same sort of physical emotional reaction to things that are just like not right in front of me. That's just kind of how people are hooked up. If like it's right in front of you, see something, you feel bad when something bad's happening right there. But like if there's a distant universe and it has a planet and I can save the entire civilization, like that sounds like important and impressive to me, and I want to do that because that still feels very close to me. I don't want their civilization to blink out of existence because I didn't drink that swig of beer. Okay, uniqueness. I mean, I get the point of the argument though. It's like they've managed to make the situation where physical proximity no longer matters the same, which is okay. Okay, uniqueness. Woollard begins by comparing distant pond many saviors with the following case. Distant pond, only hope. You hear on the radio, this radio is amazing. You hear on the radio that a child is drowning about 10 miles away. If he is not rescued, he will die. Unfortunately, specialized skills and equipment are needed to save the child. Listening to the announcement, you realize that you're the only one who could save him. Okay, so you're Elon Musk, and you hear on the radio that there's people drowning in, what was it, Thailand? You're like, I'm the only person with the engineering skill to make a sub small enough to get into that tunnel. Okay. See, the problem here is I don't believe that you're the only one who could save him. Who really is the only unique human being that has the skills required to save him? You are not Superman. I mean, it's weird. Unless you are Superman. According to Woolard's intuitions, you are required to make a substantial sacrifice to save distant pond, only hope, but not a child in distant pond, many saviors. Distant pond, only hope does not yield a proper comparison with distant pond, many saviors. As with Door, intuitions about distant pond, only hope may be affected by our tendency to rush directly to aid those in urgent need. Moreover, distant pond, only hope may trigger intuitions about professional duties. The reference to specialized skills and equipment brings to mind activities such as cave diving. Yeah, that was a very unusual situation, brought up a lot of issues. What we need is only hope, an analog of our distant pond, many saviors. Star. Excuse me. Distant pond, only hope. You hear on the radio that a child is drowning about 10 miles away. If he is not rescued, he will die. You cannot reach the child yourself, but realize that you can be able to help save the child by paying $500. There is no one else who can help. This is starting to feel like a one of those GoFundMe emails. I should never have signed up for GoFundMe. I'm getting all these emails. It's just sob stories. It's like, yeah, there's no one else can help. Or it's like also the political emails. I gave some idiot politician a few bucks and I never hear the end of it. There is, however, a further issue here. Woolard's distant pond, only hope is not made appropriately equivalent to distant pond, many saviors, nor is our distant pond, only hope, star made appropriately equivalent to distant pond, many saviors, star. The only hope cases are not made appropriately equivalent to the many saviors cases with respect to the child's chance of surviving if you refrain from helping. The only hope case makes it clear that if the child is not rescued, he will die, and that you are the only person who can help, and hence certain that the child will die if you refrain from helping. The many saviors case, by contrast, state that many other people can help, but thus far no one looks likely to come forward. To make the case appropriately equivalent, we need a further case. Distant pond, many saviors, with certainty. You hear on the radio that a child is drowning about 10 miles away. If he is not rescued, he will die. You cannot reach the child yourself, but realize that you are able to save the child by paying $500. There are others who can help, but you are certain they will not. So, certain they will not. In this case, you are still the child's only hope, in that you are the only person who has any hope of being rescued by. He has any hope of being rescued by. But you are not unique in Woolard's sense. We do not find it intuitive that you are only required to make a substantial sacrifice to save the child in distant pond, only hope, star, but not the child in distant pond, many saviors, certainty. Moreover, as with nearby and distant ponds, many saviors, it seems hard to believe it would not be permissible to save 5 children in a situation like that of child in distant pond, many saviors, certainty, when you could instead save 1 child in a situation like that of child in distant pond, only hope, star. These cases bring into focus the inability of uniqueness to ground personal involvement. Yeah. I guess so. It's just, again, I'm getting so far out of my intuition. Maybe I'm not the sort of person that should be in charge of saving anyone's life, that this is causing me a lot of consternation, really, envisioning these sorts of situations. You cannot reach your child yourself, but realize that you were able to save by paying $500, and you are certain they will not. So you're the only person who has the $500 and might pay it. Everyone else is just callous. It seems like, well, that seems sort of a weird thing to know. It just seems very weird. Okay, anywho. Keep going. Personal encounter. Woollard begins with the following case, based on Unger. Wealthy drivers. Over your CB radio. Oh, there's a new kind of radio you got. Cool. Over your CB, you hear the pleas of a man. He has a major wound in his leg. As he has had medical training, he can tell you that if he does not get to the hospital soon, he's almost certain to lose it. If you help the man, your car will sustain $5,000 worth of damage. 3 other drivers are also in radio contact. Each of the others is nearer to the man and far wealthier than you, but as each of the 3 complain, she doesn't want to get involved. So you've got some jerks that you're in contact with that won't help the dude and could, and you're the only good person. Okay. Woolard's intuition is that you are required to make a substantial sacrifice to help the man, even though you are not near to him and not the only person who can help him. The crucial factor here, Woollard claims, is personal encounter. It seems clear that there is a personal encounter between you and the child in Singer's classic pawn case. It may be less clear how you also have a personal contact with the man in Wealthy Drivers. On this, Woollard writes, I also think there is a personal encounter in the Wealthy Drivers case. The victim appeals to you over CB radio, and appeal over a CB radio, unlike appeal over a standard radio, is the beginning of a two-way conversation. Being part of a conversation is with someone enough to count as having a personal encounter. You know, maybe it's just me being a cynical New Yorker, but I've had so many people in New York say so many, like, and this is not common to New York, this is any sort of urban environment. There's people out there to scam you, and it's just like you don't believe people when you have this sort of personal encounter with them, because it's never ending. You will constantly get sob stories, you will constantly hear stuff, and none of it's true. They just want your $5 or whatever. So the idea that the guy is going to lose his leg because you heard it over the CB radio is just, I'm sorry, cynical New Yorker is like, I don't think so. Like, I don't believe you. I mean, I remember very clearly this lady who was scamming for money. It was a very cold day, and she was on the street shaking. She was like violently shaking. But the problem was, she wanted money. She didn't want help. She could have gone a lot of places to get off the street, and a very nice young woman went over and gave her her scarf, and the bum on the street, she wouldn't take it. Why wouldn't she take it? Because she didn't want the scarf. She wanted someone's money. She was faking. And so the lady forced her scarf on her, and I was waiting for something, so I was walking around the block. I just was like circling. So by the time I had walked around the block, the lady who gave her the very nice scarf had left, and the bum was back to shaking on the street, and the scarf was in the trash bin on the corner. Like, she threw away the lady's scarf. It's like, and if you looked at her, she looked like she was gonna die from hypothermia or something. It's like, well, I'm sorry, this is like a thing that happens in New York. You have scammers, and you don't believe them anymore, and so all of this sort of personal encounter crap, I've lost it. So I'm sorry. And sorry for the aside. But I find it kind of funny that, like, I'm supposed to have the same intuition as other people. It's just like, no. We believe that Wealthy Drivers is insufficiently cleaned up to enable a proper test of the intuitive moral relevance of personal encounter. Wealthy Drivers brings in the rushing directly to aid factor, to which we already called attention to in our discussion of proximity and uniqueness. Furthermore, intuitions here are likely affected by the thought that you at least have a duty to respond to the man over CB radio, apart from any duty you may have to make substantial sacrifice to aid him, and the likelihood that once you start talking to him, you'll get yourself on the hook to do more by promising him that you will be on your way. You seem like you'd want to say something to reassure him and feel pressed to help him that you are on the way in response to his frantic cries for help. Like, I've been asked by the same bum for money in Grand Central a few times, and I was like, on the third time, I was like, on the fourth time, I was like, so is your dad still in the hospital? Do you still need money to get to wherever it was? It's like, and he just walked away from me. Like, yeah. We need to remove these potentially confounding factors using a case in which personal encounter is present but otherwise matches distant pawn many survivors star. To that end, we offer a version of the latter involving a CB radio rather than a standard one. Distant pawn many survivors CB. Over your CB radio, you hear the pleas of a child who is drowning about 10 miles away. He's got an electronics, he's got a waterproof CB radio, that's amazing. If he is not rescued, he will die. You cannot reach the child yourself, but realize that you're able to save the child by paying $500. However, the only way to pay the $500 is by switching off your CB radio immediately, as if it was left on, we can suppose prevent the life-saving payment from going through. Alright, so you've got like a internet over CB, so you have to like switch over to the internet to PayPal somebody the money. Venmo or whatever. There are many other people who can help, but thus far no one looks likely to come forward. We do not find it intuitive that you are required to make a substantial sacrifice to save the child and distant upon many survivors CB radio, but not save the child and distant upon many survivors star. Moreover, as with nearby and distant upon many saviors, it seems hard to believe that it would not be permissible to save 5 children in a situation like that of the child and distant upon many saviors star, when you could instead save 1 child in a situation like the child and distant upon many saviors CB. These cases bring into focus the inability of personal encounter to ground personal involvement. Yeah. Okay. I have questions on the phenomenology of empathy at this point. It's like, I don't know if the CB radio is the sort of thing that would cause me to act. I don't know. We have argued that Woollard's cases do not provide a sound intuitive basis for claiming that proximity, uniqueness, and personal encounter are each defeasibly sufficient to ground personal involvement, where the latter is understood to ground a requirement of substantial sacrifice to aid that we would not otherwise have. Does this mean we must accept the arguments by Singer and Unger that intuitions about the duty to assist in emergency cases support comparatively stringent duties to aid distant persons living in extreme poverty? No. There are other differences between Singer's pond case and the case in which you can save a life by giving to charity. For all we have argued, some of them are morally relevant. Finally, perhaps we are not required to save lives whenever we can do so, without thereby sacrificing anything of comparable moral importance. Consider never-ending ponds. Young children are constantly falling into ponds in your country. You cannot go out for a walk without running across a child drowning in a pond. You've saved many drowning children at substantial cost to yourself. Today, when you see a child drowning in a pond surrounded by other potential saviors, all doing nothing, you just keep walking. This is New York, right here. There are constantly terrible things, and you have to just keep walking. There is nothing else to be done. It's not like that you can ever stop the terrible things. Woollard writes that the agent here is not required to make substantial sacrifices every single time. When the agent has already made substantial sacrifices in a number of cases or anticipates being required to do so in the future, the agent may refuse to help in a given case. If this is correct, we can avoid Singer-esque conclusions without appealing to the moral relevance of factors such as proximity, uniqueness, or personal encounter. Yeah, okay, so this is finally getting somewhere. I'm not on board with how, like, I'm sure this was a well-argued paper, first of all. Like, these arguments, what they did was they picked apart the examples by relevantly changing little bits every time to hit all the different cases that the author had brought up. Problem is, I feel like the case-by-case thing is missing the forest for the trees. Like, there's something about being personally engaged with somebody, not like an encounter. Like, the problem is the concept of encounter here is like funky to me. Like, what counts as an encounter? It's like this CB radio is an encounter. That seems a little weird. Like, then you were talking to the person and engaging with them, and maybe you could appreciate that, but it seems like the concept of encounter is the wrong concept to be talking about here. So, like, walked by a million bums in New York. Last guy I gave more than like $1 to, or like I gave this guy a few bucks. No, last 2 guys. One had a sign that said he was going to fight Iron Mike Tyson or something, and he had this huge this nice sign, like handwritten with like a marker, but like it was like I was gonna fight Tyson, and this was right when he got screwed over by that evil promoter, and like something happened, and he was like the last fight, and that fight got canceled, and that was like his chance to at least get himself famous, and after that his life fell apart. And he had a cool sob story, and it was like he obviously put some thought into it. Who knows if it's true? So I gave that guy money for having like a good performance. He had put some effort into actually making up a story. The second guy he looked like he was terribly down on luck. He was a huge guy, and he had a little box that said, "You can insult me for like $2, you can insult me, whatever." And I threw like it was like either $1 or $2. I threw like $2 or $3, so like an extra $1. And you could see he was such an so unhappy, and he was just like taking abuse because like I don't know, flagellation. And it's like, and I just said, "Yo, dude, have a great night," and I walked away. And the biggest smile broke out onto his face. But it's like, you've got an insane number of stories. It's not even like kids falling into pots. You've got like a crush of insanity in New York, of like stupid things happening constantly and people getting screwed over, down on their luck, and all sorts of stuff. And it's like you're expecting me to care about like walls and doors and like distance. Like this doesn't even compute to me in some sense because of the level of insanity that is like right over there. My apologies. All worked up. But anywho, so I'm not really buying. That's to say, the arguments were well done. I don't find them personally compelling because maybe I have a weird experience. But other than that, it was a nice paper. Hope everyone has a nice night. Please send me a suggestion and stay safe, y'all. Have a good. Hope you have a good week. I'll be back on Tuesday.